And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Now, yesterday we reported that certain politicians had wasted little time in politicizing the tragic murders of WDJB journalists Allison Parker and Adam Ward. Among those racing to television radio microphones, along with some social media, were Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who took to the airwaves within minutes of the shooting to discuss his plans for increased background checks for gun purchases. His efforts were then followed by Hillary Clinton, who wrote on her Twitter account, "Heartbroken and angry, we must act to stop gun violence, and we cannot wait any longer, praying for the victims' families in Virginia." Even President Obama discussed gun control following the tragedy in an interview set to air tomorrow on WPVI in Philadelphia.
It breaks my heart every time you read about or hear about these kinds of incidents. What we know is that the number of people who die from gun-related incidents around this country dwarfs any deaths that happen through terrorism.
However, one person, I'm actually thinking about what the president said, we have to talk about that. One person electing to appear before television cameras last night to discuss gun control laws, to the surprise of many, was the father of Allison Parker, Andy Parker.
We've got to do something about crazy people getting guns, and and the problem that you guys have is that, and I know it's the news businesses and this is a big story, but next week it isn't going to be a story anymore and everybody's going to forget it. But you mark my words, my mission in life, and I talked to the governor today, he called me and he said, and I told him, I said, I'm going to do something, whatever it takes to get gun legislation to shame people, to shame legislators into doing something about closing loopholes in background checks and making sure crazy people don't get guns.
So guys, let me start with this to get this out of the way. A number of my conservative friends today, both in what they've been writing and what they're saying on the radio, on television, are criticizing the president for being wrong in saying that the number of terrorist-related deaths pale next to American gun deaths. Now, it's all how you interpret it. If you're talking about worldwide, then they're about the same, in fact. There were 33,000 gun-related deaths last year, including suicide, including murder, including accidents. There were roughly 32,000 or 33,000 of people killed by terrorists around the world. However, I think what he intended to say, and this is always a problem, is in America, terrorist deaths in America. Is this working the edge too much to just criticize President Obama?
I think the reaction to it is that these are false equivalencies and very separate issues, and that Obama tried to, pack together. That as commander-in-chief, it is his duty to protect us from terrorists and national security. However, there is, as we just witnessed in the last segment, a raging debate over the Second Amendment and the extent of our gun rights. When I look at this, of course, the conversation, unfortunately, always goes to gun control. I wish we had more of a conversation about how do we deal with these marginal people. This gentleman, Bryce Williams, who had been already escorted from his place of work by police because he was so out of control. How can family members better identify someone in their family who they are worried is a threat, who could be violent, who could be a murderer of his colleagues? How can we try to prevent these outside of gun control? Again, raging debate we had at the last segment. How can we give people better tools to handle these nutters, frankly, that will always be in our midst?
Joe, what do you think? I mean, are people going too far? I was actually on the Sean Hannity radio show today, and Sean was making a big fuss about this, and I went, come on. I think he was talking comparatively about the terrorist deaths in America, which we spend a lot of time worrying about, which we should. Certainly no problem with that. But do we spend enough of our resources and our time thinking about what Amy just said, how we're going to try and do something about these things that happen?
Of course we don't talk about what Amy just said, because it actually takes a thought process. That actually takes nuance. It's not an easy, simple soundbite. President should be making that comparison. I don't even know where that came from. It makes no sense. But I'm not going to criticize Andy Parker. That I know.
Well, that's the next thing I want to talk about.
Okay, because he is an emotional guy. He just lost his daughter.
Right.
Just suddenly. He hears on the radio, she was shot and was on live TV, dead, and he had to vent. So if he's being emotional and saying things that didn't make a heck of a lot of sense as far as like we need more gun legislation, well, it wouldn't have prevented this anyway. No one's going to challenge him on that.
Exactly.
Let the man vent. In fact, I wouldn't even have booked him if I'm Megyn Kelly.
Well,
you know
see,
what? I get it's a
that's
story.
where I wanna
Don't
go
book
here.
him.
That's
Well,
exactly
it's wrong.
but if he wants to be on television to talk about this tragedy in his family,
Wait,
how do you
let's-
not
wait,
hear what he has to
wait,
say?
guys,
I would have said no. I understand what you're saying. I would have said no.
Excuse me. I'd like to set it up first, please.
Okay.
I want to set this up. Okay. This is a touchy thing. I mean, I was actually on the radio last night making this speech about how politicians should have a moratorium before they're allowed to politicize this kind of stuff. When the family's ready to talk about it, the politicians should. And as I'm saying all this, all of a sudden, the TV's on in the background, and there is Mr. Parker on Megyn Kelly, and I'm like, well, never mind, he's apparently ready. Of course you don't want to criticize this man. He's been through the worst thing anybody could be through. But Nomi, what does this say about the media? I mean, I'm trying to envision a booker at Megyn Kelly's show calling this man the day his daughter was murdered and saying, would you like to be on our TV show tonight?
He said,
and
he said that he would do it. I mean, listen, the family has every right to. And I watched the interview 3 times, and I actually thought he brought up some very valuable points. I mean, the reality is that we're not politicizing this issue. Half of our politicians aren't talking about it, are ignoring it, and are bought and sold by interest, as he said.
To wait a couple of days?
Wait, come on. Like, we live in the real world here. People automatically...
In the real world. I was thinking about what happened to those families last night, not about the politics.
I understand that. And I'm saying, in the world that we live in, where people are live tweeting shootings and responding on tweets, this is a rapid response world. We don't live in the 1950s anymore.
Pause and reflect does not apply here, unfortunately, because we have to fill airtime. That's the way it is.
All right, so we got to wrap it up. What do you think about Mr. Parker's comments about guns? Let us know at newsmaxtv.com/comments. And coming up next, Donald Trump continues to lead the GOP field, but could he be beat by Joe Biden in a general election? Stay tuned.